October 1971, a Roman amphitheater in Pompeii, Italy. There are concerts remembered for the crowds, the screams, the applause that never seems to end. Pink Floyd at Pompeii is remembered for the opposite. No audience, no voices, no reaction, just stone, wind, and a band playing inside a place where time once stopped forever. Pompeii wasn't just empty. It was silent in a way that feels wrong, as if sound itself didn't belong there anymore. And yet, Pink Floyd chose that silence on purpose. They didn't arrive to entertain anyone. They arrived to play for something unseen. This wasn't a concert meant to be celebrated. It was something closer to a ritual, a moment captured between past and future, life and ruin. Years later, Roger Waters would reflect on Pompeii as more than a performance. It was a feeling, a strange tension, a sense that the music was echoing back from the stones themselves. What makes Pompeii haunting isn't just where it happened. It's when Pink Floyd stood there just before becoming the biggest band in the world. Still searching, still uncertain, still exposed. Pompeii captured them in that fragile space before fame swallowed everything. And that's why the film doesn't feel like history. It feels like something that shouldn't exist. Before we continue, if you love Pink Floyd's stories and want to keep their legacy alive, subscribe, like, and share. Pompeii is not a normal ruin. It isn't slowly abandoned. It wasn't forgotten over time. Life there ended in an instant. One moment, people were eating, walking, laughing. The next, everything stopped buried under ash, heat, and silence. When Pink Floyd stepped into the amphitheater, they weren't just standing in an old venue. They were standing inside a frozen moment. No footsteps, no movement, only echoes bouncing off stone that once heard screams of panic instead of music. That weight changes everything. Every note feels heavier. Every pause feels intentional. The band didn't play to Pompeii. They played inside it. The empty seats became unsettling, as if the place itself was watching. Without an audience, there was no distraction. No applause to hide mistakes. No energy coming back from the crowd. Just four musicians, exposed, surrounded by death and history. It created a strange pressure, the kind that forces music to slow down, to stretch, to breathe differently. Pompeii didn't respond with cheers. It responded with echo, and that echo would shape everything that followed. The idea of Pink Floyd at Pompeii sounded wrong from the start. A rock band, an ancient amphitheater, no audience. Director Adrian Maben wasn't trying to create another Woodstock. He wanted the opposite. No crowd, no spectacle, no celebration, just music and space. Most bands would have rejected it immediately. Pink Floyd didn't. Because by 1971, they were already drifting away from traditional performance. They weren't interested in applause. They were interested in atmosphere. Pompeii offered something unsettling, a chance to remove the human response entirely. No clapping, no validation, only sound confronting silence. The band agreed, not knowing exactly what they were walking into. When they arrived, the reality hit harder than the concept. The scale, the emptiness, the sense that this place had its own memory. Pompeii didn't feel like a backdrop. It felt like a presence. And once the cameras rolled, there was no way to pretend this was just another performance. The music had nowhere to hide, and neither did they. The first notes felt different. Without an audience, time stretched. Songs didn't move forward, they hovered. There was no feedback loop, no faces reacting, no energy pushing the band onward. Each note hung in the air, unanswered. That silence changed the way Pink Floyd played. They slowed down, let sounds linger longer than usual, allowed tension to build without release. The amphitheater responded in its own way. Echoes returned seconds later, distorted, ghost-like, as if the place itself was replying slowly. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It felt like communication. The band became hyper-aware of every movement, every breath, every mistake. There was nowhere to escape. And strangely, that pressure sharpened the music. It became darker, more deliberate, almost hypnotic. Pink Floyd weren't performing for people. They were performing into a void, and the void didn't care. That's when Pompeii stopped feeling like a location and started feeling like part of the band. As the performance continued, something shifted. The music no longer felt like songs. It felt like movement. Echoes didn't begin or end, they drifted. Notes circled the amphitheater, climbing the stone walls, then falling back like shadows. This wasn't rock music in a traditional sense. It was closer to a ceremony. Drums sounded distant and threatening. Guitars howled instead of sang. And when the screams arrived in Careful with That Axe, Eugene, they didn't shock, they belonged. In a place where people once screamed for their lives, the sound felt disturbingly appropriate. The band wasn't trying to scare anyone, but fear crept in anyway. There was no crowd to break the spell. No applause to remind you this was entertainment. Every pause felt intentional. Every silence felt loaded. Pompeii absorbed the sound and returned it altered slower, colder, heavier. Pink Floyd had created many experimental performances before. None like this. Because here, the setting wasn't passive. The stones carried memory, and the music seemed to wake something buried beneath them. By this point, the band wasn't just playing in Pompeii. They were interacting with it, and that interaction was becoming unsettling. But the most disturbing element wasn't the noise. It was what happened when the sound stopped. When the music paused, something strange happened. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt present. The wind brushed against microphones. Footsteps echoed louder than expected. Breathing became audible. Without an audience, silence wasn't a break, it was part of the performance. It wrapped itself around the music. Each pause stretched longer than normal, forcing the listener to sit inside it. In most concerts, silence is relief. Here, it was tension. It made the space feel larger, colder, more aware. The band felt it too. There was nowhere to reset emotionally. No crowd noise to shake off mistakes or fatigue. Just silence, waiting. That silence sharpened everything. A single drum hit felt massive. A quiet note felt exposed. Pompeii didn't forgive hesitation. It amplified it. The silence became a mirror, reflecting every doubt, every hesitation, every intention. It's why the film feels uncomfortable to some viewers. The human brain expects noise, applause, validation. Pompeii offers none of that. It forces you to stay present. And just when the tension feels unbearable, something absurd breaks through. In the middle of all that tension, something completely unexpected happens. A dog starts singing. Mademoiselle Knobs feels wrong on paper. A blues track driven by a howling dog inside an ancient ruin during a performance that already feels ritualistic. It shouldn't work. But it does. And that's what makes it unsettling. For a brief moment, the tension cracks. The atmosphere lightens. The viewer relaxes. It almost feels human again. Almost playful. But that relief is a trap. Because when the music shifts back, the contrast makes everything darker. The absurdity doesn't break the spell, it deepens it. It reminds you how fragile the mood is, how easily it can change, and how exposed everything feels without a crowd to guide emotion. Pink Floyd understood instinctively that contrast is powerful. By placing something light inside something heavy, the weight returns stronger. Pompeii becomes unpredictable. You can't settle into one emotion. And that instability keeps the viewer locked in. But there's something even more haunting beneath all of this. Because not everything that was filmed survived. Not everything that happened at Pompeii still exists. That fact alone adds another layer to the mystery. Some of the original film negatives moments captured during those days inside the amphitheater were later destroyed. Burned. Erased. At the time, no one thought they mattered. They weren't hits. They weren't promotional gold. They were just strange images of a band playing to no one. And yet, those lost frames haunt the story. Because Pompeii already feels incomplete like a fragment of something larger, knowing that parts of it are gone forever makes the film feel even more ghostly. What moments disappeared? What expressions were lost? What sounds echoed once and never again? Pompeii became a memory with missing pieces, a ritual partially erased. And that absence mirrors the performance itself, just like the empty seats. just like the missing crowd. The film we have is only what survived. Everything else lives in imagination. And that's where Pompeii becomes more powerful than a concert. It turns the viewer into a participant, filling the gaps, inventing meaning. But Pompeii didn't stay frozen in the past. It kept changing. And with every version, it revealed something new. Pompeii never settled into a final form. It returned again and again, altered. New edits appeared. Different cuts surfaced. Scenes were rearranged. And then came the contrast that changed everything. Suddenly, the ruins of Pompeii were placed next to something completely alive. The studio. Footage of Pink Floyd working on the dark side of the moon. Bright lights. Machines humming. Ideas taking shape. The film became a bridge. On one side, a city destroyed in seconds. On the other, an album that would live forever. Pompeii sat exactly in between. It captured Pink Floyd at the moment before they crossed into immortality. Still searching. Still unsure. Still exposed. That contrast makes the film unsettling. You're watching a band standing at a threshold, not knowing what comes next. The ruins behind them. The future ahead. Few films ever capture that kind of transition. And that's why Pompeii keeps resurfacing. It isn't nostalgia. It's unfinished business. Pompeii doesn't haunt people because it's ancient. It haunts because it's honest. There's no performance mask, no crowd energy to hide behind, just four musicians facing silence. And silence doesn't lie. The film captures Pink Floyd at their most vulnerable before fame reshaped everything. Before expectations. Before pressure. Before the world started listening too closely. That's the real reason Pompeii feels unsettling. It documents a moment that should have passed unnoticed. A moment of transition, of uncertainty, of quiet risk. Once the dark side of the moon exploded, that version of Pink Floyd disappeared. Pompeii is the last place where they still exist. Not as legends, but as humans. And that makes the film feel less like a concert, and more like a message sent forward in time, waiting to be discovered. Pink Floyd at Pompeii was never meant to be a statement. It wasn't planned as a masterpiece. It wasn't designed to become legend. It was simply four musicians standing in the wrong place, at the perfect moment. A city that died suddenly. A band still searching for its identity. Silence where applause should have been. Together, they created something that doesn't behave like a concert. It feels closer to a memory. Or a warning. Pompeii captured Pink Floyd before success protected them. Before fame explained everything. Before history decided who they were supposed to be. That's why the film feels alive. Because it shows a version of the band that no longer exists. Once the dark side of the moon changed the world, this moment vanished forever. Pompeii is the last echo of that fragile space. When the future was uncertain and nothing was guaranteed. And maybe that's why it still unsettles us. Because deep down, we recognize it. That moment before everything changes. If this story made you feel something, if Pompeii still echoes in your mind, subscribe to the channel to keep these hidden stories alive. Like the video if you felt the silence. And comment below, do you think Pompeii was a concert or something else entirely? Your answer might say more about you than the film itself.